Hey, good afternoon, folks. Welcome to another edition of Coffee and Compliance, where we speak with security and compliance experts on various topics. My name is Matt Cooper. I'm a senior manager for privacy risk and compliance at Vanta, and I'm joined today by my esteemed colleague, Bart Tissues, senior systems engineer at Vanta. And today we're going to talk about demystifying access reviews. Hey, Bart, thanks for hanging out with me today.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, bud. So we are today talking about access reviews, and we're going to break it down for folks. So I'm going to start off with some questions.
hmm
First off, help us understand what is an access review.
Yeah, I mean, access review is something that I would say companies typically do on like some sort of regular cadence to make sure that all their internal systems and tooling are kind of buttoned up and as secure as they can be.
Cool. And what is typically the driver for an access review? I mean, if is this something that folks have to do, they want to do, break it down for us.
Yeah, I would say that like a driver, nobody has to do access reviews, but it's always something that companies should keep in mind because obviously, if you're dealing with customer data or even your own data, you want to make sure that the right people have access to it. So doing this kind of like on a normal basis is not only good if you're just doing it for yourselves or your company, but it usually falls within the spectrum of like um, any sort of like compliance policies that are in place or like your normal like for example like a SOX 2 audit that's usually falls right into that bucket.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so you don't have to do it, but maybe once you get into some audited framework compliance like SOC 2 or ISO, you then commit to doing it and you do have to do it. Why, you know, what is the point of doing this? I mean, don't we already have an access management program, that controls our access?
Yeah, I mean, newer companies don't always have that because like you're starting out, like a lot of stuff is manual. You don't have those automated policies in place. Um, Here at like Vanta, we do have a lot of automation, but there's times where sometimes the automation could fail, or maybe there was a time like pre-automation where something was missed. I mean, there's always some human error involved. So having going back and doing an access review just lets me go and double check that the work's been done properly and that if I catch anything that should have been done before and it wasn't, we can just rectify it like then and there.
Okay, perfect. Can you give us some examples of things you might find in an access review? Like what are things that could be wrong with your access program?
Yeah, you could have an access program where, like, I guess some of the things you would typically find are like maybe somebody has switched roles, and they maybe, I mean, this is probably a bad example, but somebody goes from like an engineer to like a salesperson for whatever reason, and I mean, obviously they wouldn't need access to like all your sensitive internal tooling like GitHub or anything that has to do with engineering at that point. If you've moved to sales, and if you don't have something in place that kind of does a check on those things, then I mean that salesperson could have access when they really don't need it. And having a salesperson having sensitive access to like repos, like just it doesn't make sense. And if their account happens to get um, I don't know, compromised, like because uh, then if their account happens to get compromised, then um, there's a sense of code right out there and open for anybody to get.
Sure, sure, good.
Yeah.
And when you're doing this access review, what level of granularity are you doing it at? Can you help folks with that? Like, what are you actually checking for? Is it just someone's here, or is it more than that?
Yeah, I think it depends on what the tools are. So like there's some tools where yeah, we're checking to see if like, hey, is this person here? Were they terminated? Then they shouldn't have an account anymore, right? But there's other tools like maybe Google or GitHub or AWS and things to that manner where we actually want to dig a little bit deeper. Also check for like if they should have access or not based on if they've been terminated. But also check like the roles again. Like we're basically going back to seeing like, do they have that right level of access? Um, in order to ensure that those systems are as secure as they can be.
Okay. Um, Another question, how do you scope the access review? So, like, there's a lot of systems in a company. Do you check
Mhm.
every system, every time you do it? Do you do a rolling thing? And, and if you can't check every one, how would you prioritize?
Yeah, I think basically how we prioritize is we kind of um, we don't check like every single system. We do have a lot that's automated. So once we start automating things, and depending on like the data that those systems hold, it might be as simple as like we know that Okta might be taking care of it, and we have alerting set up to ensure that like if something does fall through the cracks, we're alerted immediately instead of kind of waiting for this access review to happen. But for more sensitive tooling, like we're usually checking on maybe like a quarterly basis to see if somebody should have that access. Maybe checking with the leadership team that handles that within those organizations to see what kind of roles need to have certain types of access, and to kind of maybe automate those if we can, to make sure that people always have like editor access and like this, and maybe just reader and something else. And then also kind of going as granular as like working with HR to see all the role changes, to kind of do an audit on that level, to see who's changed roles and to see if anybody's had like a big step from one thing to another that should have a lot less access than they used to have.
Okay, good. You kind of started leading into something I was going to ask, which was you're a systems engineer. Well, how do you know like what every person's access should be? I mean, I get that they have roles, but sometimes I think there's variation there. Like, can you elaborate on what you do to figure that out?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't know what everybody should have like by myself. So working cross functionally with other orgs and other divisions within the company to identify like what somebody should and shouldn't have, and coming up with some sort of exception process for maybe somebody that shouldn't have like something that's a little more um, sensitive than what they should have, and coming up with a process for them to maybe get that access if they truly need it, and who to ask for approval. But basically I have to work cross functionally to identify who needs what access, because just being a systems engineer and adminning a lot of these tools, like I don't always know that.
Okay, sure. Um, Talk about what do you do when you find access that's wrong? Is there, certain advice you could give us there?
Yeah, I mean, when I find access that's wrong, I mean, first of all, I don't unless I obviously know that they shouldn't have that, and I don't need to really like go and ask about it. I can take it away then and there if we really need to really audit it in case it's like it is a sensitive tool. Otherwise, like I would hate to disrupt somebody's workflow, and maybe they need it for a good reason. So being able to reach out to them to get some more context, plus also reaching out to possibly their manager, getting the right approvals for them to either keep it, or just finding out if they didn't actually need it anymore, which sometimes they don't, and they'll let me know. And then I'll go ahead and take care of that access. But kind of, I mean, again, kind of working cross functionally, like going to them plus whoever else I need to get approval or not, um, is the way I would go about like actioning on somebody that I see that might have wrong access.
Okay. Okay, good. And then what sort of like deliverable or output is important from this exercise?
I think having a kind of like a clear path on like who's identified as people that you should be looking at, like as far as like role changes, people who are terminated within the we do it quarterly, so on a quarterly basis, like kind of having that list, um, having like kind of a set guidelines on what we go through to do it. Uh, so like typically like we have a spreadsheet with like a bunch of different all the targeted people with all the systems that we have identified for this access review with the system owners, and then we kind of go out and figure out who has that access, and once it's complete we kind of check it off our list, and we store it in like a secure location for us to reference back to if we ever need it.
Okay, good. All right. I think this has been helpful. Kind of last question here. What tools do you use to do it?
Yeah, so I mean, uh, we do use spreadsheets. I mean, they definitely get a bad rap sometimes, but I mean, you can definitely do them in a spreadsheet. It's not awful. We basically kind of have like this whole laid out process where we share it out with all the system owners and have them go and check all their things, so it's really easy to do. But I mean, I'm all about automation, so being able to have something to help me out, which Vanta is actually creating in beta phase, and we are excited to use this in the next upcoming quarterly access review because it'll pull in all of a lot of the stuff through our integrations and help with notifying all the owners of all the tools based on who's a vendor owner in the system. It should make life a lot easier, especially with like kind of doing the naggy like a lot of paperwork stuff. And then it stores everything like in a nice interface, all within your security compliance tooling, Vanta, which is really nice. So I'm really excited about using it.
Okay, awesome. Bart, thanks so much for your time and walking us through demystifying access reviews. For anyone that's watching, you can learn more about our security and compliance topics in the resources section of our website. Subscribe to our social channels for more content like this, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Bart.
Yeah. See you. Thanks.